You know that feeling when you've got something really important, some knowledge that could genuinely help people, but then figuring out how to share it so it sticks and maybe even spreads, well, that feels like a huge hurdle.
It really does. It's one thing to just tell someone something, quite another to empower them so they really get it and can, confidently pass it on themselves. That's the tricky part.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're digging into today. We've got this really interesting source material here, a section called Training Trainers. It's from a resource about an approach they call making radical disciples.
Yeah, it's like getting a look under the hood, isn't it, at a very thought out system for equipping people, making them effective teachers, leaders, really.
Right. So our mission for this deep dive, and hey, since you're listening, you're part of this too, is to unpack the core ideas, the actual step-by-step process of this training method.
We want to pull out those insights, the things that maybe you could use, anyone could use, to design learning that doesn't just, get heard, but actually multiplies.
Exactly. We're hoping for some of those aha moments. You see how this practical, repeatable way of doing things could actually make a big difference.
And what jumps out right away is how clear they are about what someone should actually be able to do after this training. It's very skill-focused.
Yeah, the source lists some really specific outcomes like someone finishing this should be able to teach 10 basic discipleship lessons about Christ. And here's the key bit. Using a reproducible process. That idea just keeps coming up.
Reproducible. So it's not just about the trainee learning this stuff. It's about them learning the system so they can easily teach others the same way.
The trainees become trainers. That's the goal.
Makes sense.
They should also apparently be able to remember 8 clear pictures of what a follower of Jesus looks like.
Yeah.
Lead a simple worship time in a small group.
Okay. Focused on the most important commandment, it says.
Yeah. And feel confident sharing their own story, their testimony, and the basic gospel message.
So foundational stuff for, discipleship and leading within their particular way of thinking. The focus on remembering and feeling confident, it suggests they want it really ingrained, really practical.
And it keeps going. They should be able to present a vision for reaching out, training believers, using something they call an Acts 29 map.
Acts 29 map.
Yeah, and importantly, start their own group, a disciple group, which might even grow into a church, and then train those people to do the same thing. It's all designed to ripple outwards.
Okay, that Acts 29 map idea, maybe just briefly, what's the gist of that for folks who haven't heard the term?
Sure. From what I gather, it's basically a visual tool, like mapping out a plan for reaching a specific community or area, identifying people who could lead, groups to train. It's like a strategy map for multiplying.
Gotcha. A roadmap for growth. Okay, so how does this reproducible training actually, work day to day or session to session?
Well, the source breaks each session into 4 main parts: praise, prayer, study, and practice.
4 parts. Okay.
And they even suggest rough timings. About 10 minutes for praise, 10 for prayer, then 30 for study, and 30 for practice.
That structure sounds pretty deliberate. Gives it a rhythm, makes it consistent, probably easier to reproduce, like you said. People know it's coming.
Right. So let's walk through them. Praise. Starts with praying for blessing, for direction, then singing together. It could be simple choruses, hymns, maybe an instrument, maybe not. Seems like a way to just, center everyone and ask for guidance.
So it's a shared focus, invites that sense of God's leading right away. And the flexibility on music means it could work in lots of different places, different cultures.
Okay, then prayer. This is interesting. Learners pair up, but with someone new each time.
Oh, okay. Mixing it up.
Yeah. And they pray about 2 things. Specific people they know who need to hear about Christ, and for the training group itself. But there's another layer.
Which is?
If someone hasn't started their own little disciple group yet, their prayer partner actually helps them brainstorm people they could train. And they pray specifically for those potential trainees.
Wow, okay. So that prayer time is really, really intentional. It connects the training immediately to real people, real outreach. Even if you're just starting, you're already thinking about who you're going to lead and praying for them.
Exactly. Puts the focus outwards right from the beginning. Okay, now the study section. This is the biggest chunk of time. The source mentions 2 tracks running side by side, but let's stick with the main one for now, the 10 core lessons.
Okay.
What's really noticeable here is the review. Every single study time starts by going back over those 8 pictures of Christ and lessons they've already learned.
Every time.
Every time. The goal, it says, is for everyone to eventually know the whole training by heart, from memory.
That's a serious commitment to retention. Now, those 8 pictures you mentioned, any sense of what those are like? What's their purpose?
The source doesn't list them specifically in this section, but the idea seems to be providing really clear, memorable snapshots, characteristics or actions that define being a follower of Jesus in their view, kind of like shared reference points.
Okay, like benchmarks for growth.
Hmm.
Got it. So after the review, how does the actual new lesson get taught?
It follows this very specific pattern. First, the trainer asks a question about the topic.
Yeah.
Then they read the Bible passage that relates to it. Then they ask the learners to answer the question based on the scripture they just heard.
Ah, interesting sequence. So the Bible passage comes before the answer.
Right. What do you think the logic is there?
Well, it puts the authority squarely on the scripture, doesn't it? It encourages learners to find the answer in the text first, rather than just relying on what the teacher thinks. It roots it directly in the Bible.
Yeah, that makes sense. And get this. If someone gives an answer that's maybe not quite right, the trainer doesn't just correct them.
No, what'd I do?
They ask the group to read the scripture passage out loud again, and then try to answer the question again.
That's subtle, but effective, I bet. It guides them back to the source without making the trainer the only answer person. Teaches them how to find answers themselves.
Exactly. Cultivates that habit. So the study section wraps up with everyone standing up and reciting a memory verse together. 10 times.
10 times, wow.
Yeah. First 6 times, they can look at their Bibles or notes.
Yeah.
Last 4 times, it's from memory. And they always say the verse addressed first, like John 3.16, then the verse.
Okay, that is serious scripture memorization. It really drills the key point of the lesson home and gives them something concrete they can recall and use later, right?
Precisely. And the way they move from using aids to pure memory probably builds confidence too.
Yeah, internalizing it. And, in places where maybe not everyone has easy access to a Bible all the time, having key scriptures memorized, learned by heart, is incredibly powerful. It gives them this internal resource they can draw on any time, anywhere.
That's a great point. Okay, so after study cuts practice, another 30 minutes or so, remember the prayer partners.
Yeah, the ones who change each session.
They become practice partners now. For each lesson, they figure out who goes first, and that person teaches the lesson to their partner.
Teaches the whole thing.
The whole thing. Following the trainer's exact method, including the review part, the new lesson with a question scripture answer thing, and ending with the memory verse recitation. Then the second partner does it all over again.
Okay, so this is where it really shifts from listening to doing. They have to actively apply it right away. And the emphasis on copying the trainer's method, even hand motions if they used any, that really underlines the goal of making the training itself reproducible.
Totally. The source says the trainer walks around, observes, makes sure they're doing it right. It's not just go practice, it's observed, guided practice.
Right, with immediate feedback built in. The trainer's role shifts from lecturer to coach, almost, ensuring they get both the content and the delivery method down.
Okay. Then the session finishes with an ending part. This usually has some kind of practical application task,
Right.
like working on those Acts 29 maps, maybe sharing ideas with each other.
Putting it into action.
Yeah. Then any announcements and a closing prayer. And here's another little detail. They make a point of asking someone to pray who hasn't prayed out loud in the group before.
Oh, nice.
The goal is that by the end of the whole training, everyone has had a chance to lead in prayer publicly at least once.
That really reinforces the practical, lived-out aspect, doesn't it? And making sure everyone participates, even in something potentially nerve-wracking like praying aloud, it builds that supportive community feel.
Definitely. So, okay, based on doing this kind of training a lot, the source pulls out some key principles they've learned, things that make it work.
Ah, the lessons learned. Always useful.
One they call the rule of 5.
Yeah.
Basically, they found learners usually need to practice a lesson about 5 times, either seeing it taught or teaching it themselves, before they feel really confident teaching someone else.
5 times. Okay.
So partly because of that, they recommend doing 2 practice rounds in each session, each time with a different partner. Helps get those reps in.
That makes sense. Repetition builds skill, but also just that feeling of, okay, I can actually do this. Confidence is huge for teaching someone else.
For sure. Another principle, less is better than more.
Ooh, I like the sound of that one.
Yeah, they warn against overwhelming people. We often know more in our heads than we actually live out, right? So they say trainers can mistakenly just dump too much information on learners, stuff they can't realistically put into practice.
The information overload problem?
Exactly. The goal, they say, is to give learners a usable backpack of knowledge, not this massive crate they can't even lift, let alone carry around and use.
That resonates. Nobody wants to feel like they're drowning in information they can't possibly apply. actionable steps are key.
Right. Then there's different learners learn differently, acknowledging, auditory, visual, kinesthetic styles.
Standard learning theory, but important.
Their point is that truly effective, reproducible training has to hit all three styles in every lesson. That way, it works for everyone and leads to real change across the whole group.
So the design needs to be intentional about that, using scripture reading for auditory, maybe those pictures or hand motions for visual and kinesthetic. It's all woven in.
It seems like it. Okay, next principle. Process and content are important. They explicitly contrast this kind of transformational learning with just like a lecture.
Yeah, the talking head model often doesn't stick.
Right. They stress that their system, this Follow Jesus training, is all about being reproducible. They actually judge how good a lesson is by whether the next generation, the people trained by the trainees, can teach it effectively.
Wow, that's a high bar.
Yeah.
But it forces you to think beyond just getting the information across in the first session. It's about building something sustainable. The how is just as vital as the what.
Totally.
Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier there's that second track too, right? Focused on Bible stories.
Yeah, the source mentions it briefly, lessons drawn from Bible stories. It likely offers another way to grasp and teach core ideas, probably focusing more on narrative, example, character, complements the more thematic approach.
Gotcha. Okay, then there's review, which they connect directly to learning by heart.
Learning by heart,
Yeah.
not just rote memorization, but really internalizing it.
That seems to be the idea. They see it as aiming for deep heart-level change. And memorization is a key tool for that. They even tell a story
Oh, yeah.
about rice farmers, people with maybe limited formal schooling who could recall the entire training just using the hand motions because the review is so consistent.
Wow.
So their point is, don't ever skip the review section. It's absolutely crucial.
That story really drives it home. It shows the method can work across different backgrounds and just how powerful that consistent reinforcement is for making learning stick deeply.
They also talk about how they build the lesson, that repetitive pattern we discussed. Question, scripture, answer, maybe hand motion, then always reviewing the previous points before adding the new one.
Right, that step-by-step building block approach.
They say it helps with memory, obviously, but also helps people see how all the pieces fit together in the bigger picture.
Yeah, it probably makes it feel less daunting, too. Just one small piece at a time, but always connected to what came before. Creates a solid structure in the learner's mind.
And the final principle they highlight is be an example.
Ah, the modeling piece.
Exactly. They argue that real training isn't just delivering material, it's living it out yourself. Sharing genuinely about how God is working in your own life, that's what inspires people.
It's about authenticity, isn't it? If the trainer embodies the message, it carries so much more weight. It builds trust and encourages people to engage more deeply.
Yeah. They frame training not just as a technique, but as a whole way of life. And they explicitly link this kind of authentic, lived-out training to seeing these church planting movements actually happen.
So it connects personal transformation directly to wider impact.
Right. So let's try and wrap this up. This deep dive into the training trainers method really shows us a very structured, very intentional approach.
Definitely. Built on those 4 pillars: praise, prayer, study, and practice.
And that idea of reproducibility is just woven through everything, isn't it?
Absolutely. Supported by those key principles we talked about, the rule of 5 for practice, less is more, hitting different learning styles.
The importance of both the process and the content, tons of review, building lessons step by step.
And that crucial element of the trainer being a living example. It's quite a comprehensive package.
It really is. It's focused on equipping people with practical skills and the confidence they need to actually go out and effectively share what they've learned and empower others to do the same.
The multiplication aspect is central.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Like, for anyone listening, think about something you want to share effectively. A skill, some knowledge. How could you maybe borrow some of these ideas?
Yeah, like the structured practice, or making sure you're catering to different ways people learn, or maybe just simplifying that less is more idea.
What could happen if the people you trained felt confident enough, equipped enough to actually go and train others themselves? What would that ripple effect look like?
It really underscores the potential, doesn't it? When learning is designed from the start, not just for one person to absorb, but for them to easily pass it on, it makes you wonder how we could all be more intentional about creating learning that multiplies like that, whatever our field.
Definitely some powerful ideas to consider. Well, thanks for digging into this with us.
My pleasure. Lots to chew on there.
Indeed. Until our next deep dive, keep learning, keep thinking, and keep sharing.